Our religious practices seem quaint and old-fashioned, and the exclusion of women from the call are archaic. We felt like foreigners among the Catholics at spirituality in the club, and we were astonished to realize that we were also foreigners in a majority Protestant landscape. So we started asking other young Catholic women how they talk, think, and write about being Catholic. In February of 2004, we started our blog, and we began inviting women who were born, at the time we were looking 18 to 35-year-old women, to write and send us memoirs about their Catholic identity. We designed a poster, we sent it to college campuses, parishes, intentional communities across the country. We printed these little playbills and we carried them around in our backpacks, passing them out to anybody who outed themselves as under 35 Catholic. We sent hundreds of emails out to people, and by the middle of April 2007, which was about 6 weeks after we started the call, we had received over 100 essays from young women around the country. The majority of memoirs we received came from women who have, at some point, struggled with their Catholic identity, and they hold political or social positions against which Catholicism teaches. So we have lesbians who don't believe their lifestyle ought to be condemned, women who believe the church needs to ordain women, moms who've been on birth control. But we also received essays from women who wear JP2 t-shirts and devoutly study the Catechism of the Catholic Church. These women are the topic of historian William Portier. He wrote this great article called Here Come the Evangelical Catholics. He argues that a really powerful part of the future of Catholicism is in these new apologetics, or apologists, he calls them. Young people who know and strive to live by Vatican-detailed guidelines. So I should just say that our collection leans a little bit to the left of this group, but we are well aware that the 29 women in this collection are not, they're just a snapshot of voices of young women in American Catholicism. Many others do not support women's ordination, and many would not resonate with the denunciation of patriarchy in several of these essays. Still, we're confident that this collection deserves a place in the conversation about young adult Catholic identity. We're not all conservative, and we're not all liberal. We all say, I am Catholic. So I want to share with you a few things that we learned about young women's Catholic identity over the course of this project. And let me just give, I think a little bit of context is useful because we weren't just born into the 1970s and 80s.
Hey, I think your microphone is on.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Do I do something up here? Or?
Molly just left to go see if she can find something.
Okay. Have you all heard me in the back at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just faded out.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm out and be up here. They're working on it. Okay. Cool. If I speak slower and more loudly, will that
That'd be
Yes.
fine.
Okay.
Slower.
Okay. Sorry. Get a little nervous and look what happens. So I want to share with you a few things that we learned about young women's Catholic identity, and a bit of context is useful. And if anyone's really interested, I mean, we have oodles of statistics and all sorts of things, but here's a few things. I think it's useful to think about the fact that our generation, and by that I sort of mean Generation X and millennial Catholics, so Catholics born after 1965. This group of Catholics are the first to come of age without any experiences of pre-Vatican II Catholicism. Good. Can you do that?
Yeah.
Stay close. Okay, so I'm sorry. Please speak up if you can.
And slow.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay. No, I don't. So the fact that we grew up without experiences of pre-Vatican II Catholicism, I think, is significant. And frankly, it makes this a bit of an anomaly to older Catholics who knew popes before JP2 and can't imagine grade school masses in English. Our Catholicism looks different than the Catholicism of women in the 1950s, 60s, and even 70s. Nuns no longer surround us in our Catholic schools, and we are invited to lead parts of liturgies. Yet, As it did on previous generations of women, being Catholic is having a powerful impact in our lives. Catholic social teaching is why many women decide to commit themselves to lives of service. A lifelong appreciation of the depth of the Catholic tradition inspires aspiring academics to work within the institution. And the pull of Catholic identity keeps lesbians attending Mass. And a realization that Catholicism can be in our bones is part of why Catholic women called to priesthood have not become Episcopalians. So 6 themes that will, for those of you who have read the book, will seem familiar. For many of our authors, Catholic identity is rooted in growing up Catholic. Something about Catholic rituals and the Catholic way of thinking and expressing faith seeps into our bones and grabs hold of our religious senses. In their landmark study published by the University of Notre Dame in 2001, it's called Young Adult Catholics, Religion and the Culture of Choice. A team of sociologists concluded that there is sort of a Catholic glue, they called it, a firm connection to Catholicism that keeps young adults saying, I am Catholic. 3/4 of this study reported that being Catholic is special and that they can't imagine themselves in another tradition. Yet only 31% go to Mass every week. Even if we don't attend Mass regularly and don't participate in the weekly life of a parish, we are still quite likely to call ourselves Catholic. Why are young Catholics so, as Kate Abbott describes in her memoir, so passionately ambivalent about being Catholic? It's a great term. In this collection, we take this question quite seriously. And here are 29 women who acknowledge the pull of Catholicism, that Catholic glue, and do so for at least 29 different reasons. There's a sociologist named Peggy Long Marler who wrote a chapter in Young Catholics in Contemporary American Society. And she echoes part of this research that points out that our generation of Catholics act quite similar to our Protestant peers. Our Mass attendance is about the same as Protestant worship attendance, and across religious boundaries, our generation is known as a generation of seekers. We tend to be more interested in spiritual fulfillment than strict religious affiliation. Still, as both studies point out, I think this is interesting, many of us struggle to find spiritual fulfillment in Catholic communities and through various forms of Catholic ritual. The quest to figure out how to be both Catholic and spiritual is very much alive in these young women's memoirs. Just a few examples. When Eileen Campbell, who is one of the contributors, when she was 8, she informed her Irish Catholic parents that she would no longer be Catholic. She would be joining the Unitarians. Her parents promptly informed her that living in their house and she'd be at Mass on Sunday. So she surrendered, but Eileen's small rebellions against her creed of Catholicism were not quelled. But now, she can no longer imagine herself as a Unitarian. I'm going to quote a little bit from her story. I can't identify a specific turning point when I started thinking about Catholicism differently. Instead, like my small, unsuccessful rebellions against being Catholic as a kid, the rest of my Catholic life has involved small moments that have brought me closer to a reconciliation with where I came from. A moment of conflict during college when I realized that my family's values were not universal. A transcendent flash in Jerusalem, looking out over the city of David as dusk fell, where I acknowledged how much the Christian story means to me. Or last summer, at a family reunion in Donegal, when I joined my grandfather's former parish at a graveyard mass. There, standing on my great-grandfather's grave, looking out at the green, brown hills while the priest recited Our Father in Gaelic, I felt that praising God is also powerfully connected to rootedness, to family, and to tradition. Turning back, she writes, toward Catholicism has not been so much a process of letting it in as discovering that it was already there, in my blood and bones and sinews and inner world, despite what seemed like my best efforts to keep it out.